doing my online class from my home. Some of you probably know that the university has been shut down because of the second wave of COVID-19. Things are in pretty bad shape in Shantiniketan. So first thing is I would request all of you to maintain strictly COVID protocol. Take good care of the elderly members of your family. Don't let them get exposed to outsiders if possible. Be on alert, right? Things are not good. Things are not looking good at all. Anyways, let's begin our discussion. I think what we can do is to concentrate more on our studies, so that we can divert our minds from this constant fear of falling sick. So, since you are students, you are more fortunate than we are, in the sense that you have your own syllabi to handle and your studies to do. So I request all of you to concentrate, give more time to your studies, to any kind of creative work. Keep yourself engaged. Keep yourself engaged. Listen to good music. Um, Watch good films if you can. Keep yourself occupied, and most importantly, do look after your senior members of the family. Teach them to maintain all hygienic measures. This is important. Before I begin, I also would like to make one small announcement that today I plan to finish off the essay that we have been doing, The Creator of Forms. And from tomorrow, Professor Debaruti Bandopadhyay would take over. So I would request the admins, Dhruvo, Promila, Dijita, to get in touch with her if possible, and just ensure. I already have had a word with her and she has agreed to take tomorrow's class, but just in case if she needs any kind of help, or if just to ensure that the class takes place tomorrow smoothly, I would request the admins to get in touch with her via WhatsApp or SMS or phone, whatever. Right. Yes, so I think we should begin, and let's concentrate on the text. And for better connectivity, I'm switching off my camera. It is not needed. You do not need to look at my face, but listen to what I have to say. Right. So I would request all of you to open your book, your textbook, and go straight to page number. What is the page number? Tell me. Is it 40? Yes. Go to page number 40. Now, in our previous meeting, we have stopped at a point when we were discussing Tagore's views about man's desire to desire the world. Man wants the world. Man desires the world. If you look at the bottom of page 39, you will find a part of a sentence which reads something like this: we also desire the world. In the beginning of the essay, Tagore has talked about man's needs, basic needs, the things that man needs in order to survive. Then Tagore went on to talk about man's desire to know, man's ever increasing wish to gather knowledge, to know about the world, to know about the universe. From astronomy to genetics, man has tried to expand his world of knowledge as far as he could. And this desire for knowledge is what separates man from other species. According to Tagore, man wants to know for the sake of knowing. So, first characteristic feature of the human race is the necessity to satisfy certain needs. Second characteristic feature of the human race is this wish to know, this thirst for knowledge, quest for knowledge. And now, in the remaining part of the essay, Tagore talks about man's creative impulses. Man loves to create beautiful objects, beautiful art objects, the art objects which apparently serve no purposes. Art objects do not seem to have any utilitarian use. But even then, throughout the ages, in all parts of the world, man has created beautiful objects in the form of sculpture, architecture, painting, music, literature, performance, performance arts. Man has excelled in artistic activities in all its different spheres. Why is that? Tagore wants to answer this question. Why is that man has exhausted or used the energy to create things which are apparently useless? And in order to answer this question, the first point that Tagore makes is that man desires the world, and he will have to prove how this desiring the world actually results in the creation of beautiful forms. This relationship between desiring the world and creating beautiful forms is what Tagore would elucidate in the remaining part of the essay. Now, if you go to page 40, you will find that Tagore, this is the problematic. The problematic is to establish connection between desiring the world and creating beautiful things. This is the problematic. This is the problem, so to speak. You can say even a geometric problem. That's just like we used to solve geometric problems when we are in our school days. But in order to solve this problem, Tagore goes in a slightly roundabout way. He gives the example of experiencing a beautiful flower. Now, when we come across a beautiful flower, for example, the rose, what happens? We feel happy. And Tagore opines that in addition to happiness, rose also gives us pleasure. Happiness comes in the form of pleasure, right? And what is the root of this pleasure? Why do we feel a pleasurable experience when we look at the rose? On top of page 40, Tagore writes, "The rose intensifies my sense of identity through pleasure. It reveals my inner being." This is a rather profound statement to make. Let us try to follow his logic. What is he trying to say here? Now, when I come across a beautiful rose, I feel enchanted. I feel pleasure. Why? Because in addition to the beauty of the rose, I also experience my inner qualities of appreciating beautiful objects. I realize that I have the power to identify a beautiful object when I see one. I have this inherent quality to respond to beauty. Now, this realization can only come when we come across a beautiful object. This realization about ourselves, our power, or let's say our ability to appreciate beautiful things, can be discovered by us only when we look at a beautiful object. So that way, an encounter with the beautiful object, an encounter with a beautiful object like the rose, completes our understanding of ourselves. In a way, it completes our personality. It enhances our personality. How? By revealing our inner selves to us. So, rose becomes an important ingredient for us to realize our own real selves, to realize our inner beings. So now you can follow the logic that art objects are perhaps not that useless after all. Art objects also serve certain purposes. What kind of purposes? One important purpose is to make the human beings realize their own inner beings. Right. Beautiful objects from nature. When we look at a beautiful sunset, we feel elated. When we go to high altitude trekking and look at those snow capped peaks, we feel elated. A philosopher like Immanuel Kant would say that when we look at those high, lofty peaks, we experience um, um, a feeling which is close to the feeling of the sublime. So Kant develops his entire theory of the sublime, basing basing his idea on the theory of beauty. Right. So yes, so beautiful objects, be they natural objects like the rose or created objects like artworks, they serve a purpose. The purpose of making human beings discover their inner beings, to help the human beings to arrive at an enhanced consciousness about themselves, realization, right? So without those beautiful objects, without experiencing those beautiful objects, our consciousness would not reach the highest point, its highest peak. Our consciousness would remain, what Tagore says, dim. Uh, what Let us look at the text. What is veiled by unfamiliarity cannot give us pleasure, because there my sense of identity is dim, weak. It is not cultivated, it is not enlivened by knowledge. So our knowledge of beautiful objects gives us the power to be familiar with a pleasure, the pleasure that in turn would give us enhanced consciousness about the beautiful objects on the one hand and about ourselves on the other. So that is why Tagore gives the example of an exiled man, an imprisoned man. If a man is imprisoned, if a man is locked up in a cell of a prison, when he's cut off from the world, the outside world, he is deprived of any possibility of enjoying the beauties of nature, enjoying the beauties of the world, and that way he feels pain. Why? Because the beautiful objects, looking at those beautiful objects, will not quench his thirst or will not satisfy his hunger, but it will also not help him to come to a greater realization of oneself. So that is why we do not like solitary confinement. We do not like, because of this long lockdown period, all of us are feeling jittery. We are not allowed to go the places that we would like to go. That pains us. That pains us greatly. Why? Because we are unable to enjoy the beauties of the world. We are unable to enjoy the varied beauties of the world. The world has so many different kinds of beauties to offer. So we are cut off from the world. And because we are cut off from the world, our realization about ourselves, our consciousness remains dim, half lit, not fully conscious. Right. So in the next paragraph, Tagore begins with a sentence. I told you before that in Tagore's art of essay writing, we most often come across significant sentences in the beginning of paragraphs. He gives one logical statement, and then in the beginning of a paragraph, and then elucidates that logic in the remaining paragraph. He writes in the beginning of this paragraph, the second paragraph on page 40, this feeling of self consciousness that we hanker after is always a joyful feeling. This is interesting. This is another side to the issue. So Tagore has established the relationship between desiring the world and creating beautiful objects, or appreciating beautiful objects even, with the necessity to arrive at a greater self-consciousness. So self-consciousness is what man wants. Man wants to know himself. Man wants to know herself, right? So self-consciousness can come only through experiencing feelings, different kinds of feelings, human feelings. If you do not feel, extreme joy, if you do not feel terrible sorrow, if you're not exposed to the world of emotions, if you live a cocooned life, if you live a sheltered life where you're not exposed to the great feelings of humanity, your development, the development of your personality will remain incomplete. But first of all, Tagore says that all kind of feelings that man experiences, according to Tagore, are joyful feelings. Even the feelings which are related to ideas of fear, ideas of anxiety, ideas of sorrow, even according to Tagore, those feelings are also related to joy, some way or the other. And now that is a contradictory statement to make. If somebody feels an excruciating pain, if somebody feels an emotion of an excruciating pain, how can that feeling be joyful? Now Tagore tries to explain. Tagore says that every human emotion, every human feeling is after all joyful feeling, can be proved by the fact that we love tragedies. We love to read ghost stories. We love to read adventure stories. Now, ghost stories, spy thrillers, detective fiction, tragedies, these kind of artworks, these kind of literary works often deal with emotions, often deal with feelings that are not nice. If you read plays by Shakespeare, Tagore refers to Shakespeare's plays here. He refers to Othello. He refers to Hamlet. Now, those of you who are familiar with the storylines of these two plays would know that these two plays are considered as two great tragedies of Shakespeare, where painful things happen. Othello uh, murders his own wife, Desdemona, whom he has loved very, very dearly. And after murdering his wife, he also commits suicide. And in Hamlet, you also come across a number of murders. So, but then down the ages, these plays are some 500 years old, 500, probably 600 years old. So, but even then, we keep on going back to these plays. Tagore asks why? Because these plays are not all about joyful feelings. But Tagore opines, Tagore gives us the idea that all kinds of art objects are appreciated because they enhance our world of experiences. It is not possible for one single, it is not possible for a man in his single life to experience, to come across all kinds of experiences. We all have our limits of experiences. Those of you who live in the hills, my students who live in the hills, might have very little experiences of how it feels like to live near an ocean, right? I remember when I took my students for excursion to some sea beach. I do not remember where. Quite a few students from the hills told me that they were seeing the ocean for the first time in their lives. So yes, so all our experiences, our experiential worlds are limited. I have very little exposure to 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 how it feels like living inside a jungle in a forest. I have very little experience of a forest. So, right. So the point that Tagore tries to make is that um, through experiencing artworks, man can feel emotions vicariously. You know, uh, the terrible things happen to Hamlet, terrible things happen to Othello. Those things do not happen to me. So I am safe and sound, so to speak. No murder takes place in my family. Murders take place in Othello's family, in Hamlet's family. But the emotions that the characters go through are experienced by me in a vicarious manner, in an empathetic manner. So that way, I experience those feelings, the feelings that take place in the lives of others. And because I can experience those feelings, my reservoir of experiences increases. I have a better understanding of the world, not only of the world but also of the human race. And because of my greater understanding of the human race, I also arrive at a greater consciousness about myself. So now you understand that art serves some important functions. Look at the top of page 41, where Tagore writes, man's craving for self-realization impels him to move towards the world of diversity. This is another important point. This follows the previous point. So we are talking about greater self-consciousness. We are talking about knowing oneself better. And exposure to art objects, beautiful objects, gives man the opportunity to arrive at a better self-understanding. Now, in this sentence, Tagore uses the phrase self-realization. Now, this self-realization and self-understanding are almost the same thing. Um, this self-realize, this desire for self-realization, this desire to know oneself. We all want to know ourselves. I am Dipankar, but do I know who Dipankar really is? So throughout my life, I would try to explore my own inner self. That is why the philosophers have so long been saying that know thyself. Try to know yourself. If you can know yourself, your wisdom will be complete. You will reach a stage of wisdom. So self-realization is a goal that man sets for himself, herself, right? And this self-realization goads man, encourages man to move towards a world of diversity. Self-realization cannot come with only one kind of experience. Self-realization can only come when man is exposed to diverse qualities of life, all the diverse elements that life has to offer. So this diversity is very important. Tagore has talked about diversity in a different context in the previous essay, in A Message of India's History. But here he also uses the term diversity, but in a different context. Man's self-realization is built upon the base of the experience of the diverse world, the world that is full of diversity, the world of emotions, the world of feelings, the world of colors, the world of sounds, the world of oceans and forests and mountains and whatnot, and rivers, lakes. So world is full of diversity, and the nature is full of diversity. Human life is full of diversity, and if you're not exposed to, if you're not encouraged to move towards the diversity of life, your self-realization would not be achieved. So yes, so this self-realization is closely tied up with the idea of reality. The next point that Tagore picks up in this essay is the concept of reality. Most often we tend to make a distinction between the real world and the art world. We often say that the art world is artificial. Artificial, also the word artificial has got the root word art in it, right? So art is false, life is real. Most often we tend to believe that. But Tagore questions this binary. Tagore questions this way of looking at things. Art also has to offer its own artistic truth. Art is real in a different sense. But at this point, in the second paragraph, Tagore introduces the idea of reality. And he writes, what sharpens the sense of reality is a mystery. So some of are more aware than others about reality. Some of us can take better decisions in a condition. Some of us have a better understanding of the things that happen around us. We call them realistic. We call them prudent. We call them, judicious. We call them, worldly wise. So, but others could be, live in a, could be engaged in a world of fantasy, and they have a little understanding of reality. Tagore says, what sharpens the sense of reality is a mystery. But what is needed uh, is our relation with the world is as much one of need and knowledge as that of pure feeling. This relation establishes our kinship with the world, and we are delighted whenever this kinship is evoked. Right. So reality is something that can be understood if we can develop a relationship with the world, not merely based upon our needs and our knowledge system, but also to embrace the world with a relationship of feeling. It is all very well to satisfy our needs. It is all very well to know the world, but it is also very important to feel the world, to engage in a relationship with the world with feeling, right? And when this feeling, when we can feel the world, we well and truly are able to build up a bonding with the world. Tagore uses the word kinship, relationship, attiyata. In Bengali, we call it attiyata, right? So it's more than friendship. It's like to make someone or something your own kin, your relation, right? And that is why he says that the art objects or beautiful objects make us help to develop this kinship with the world. He gives us another example. He gives that if we use um, um, a can, a kerosene can, for some purposes, we do not, the kerosene can is not something beautiful. But if we use a beautiful earthen pot, a beautiful example of pottery, we use that pot to fetch water or whatever, but we also appreciate its beauty, and we develop a relationship with that beautiful pot. So the art of pottery that way serves two purposes. First, the utilitarian purposes, and second, aesthetic purposes. Kerosene can does not have any aesthetic qualities, but a beautiful earthen pot has aesthetic qualities. Aesthetic, and we fall in love with the earthen pot. We love the earthen pot with our our ability to appreciate the beauty of the earthen pot. We are able to develop a kinship with the world, the real world. So art, in the last paragraph, Tagore introduces, further qualifies his point. He says, we look for the man after our heart, not only a man after our heart, but also a like of our mind. These are important sentences. We meet the match of our mind in the world of forms. So we look for our soulmates. We look for our, a man of after our heart. Those of you who are Bengali students and students who are Bengalis would know that man of the heart is related to a particular spiritual philosophical notion called Moner Manush. But I'm not going into that right now because that would take us to a different path. What is important here is that we are always in search of soulmates. We are always in search of our inner selves as our soulmates, right? And we find our inner souls, our inner soulmates in the form of beautiful objects, art objects that offer us forms. So we, throughout the human history, has been have been rather keen to create beautiful forms, because beautiful forms teach us about certain feelings, and these feelings in turn give us a greater self-realization, and this self-realization would ultimately result in developing a bond with the world to turn the world into our own. So art that way is an ingredient absolutely essential for man's full self-realization. The world of poetry, we meet the match of our mind in the world of forms, the world of poetry, and then we experience a profound joy of our being. So again, you see, Tagore is talking about the element of joy that is involved in any artistic experience, and this joy is extraordinary in the sense this joy almost has got its own cosmic dimension. For Tagore, the entire creation is a joyous creation. So that way, if you stretch this idea, then you can say that God is also an artist, and God has created this world, and you can consider this world as a beautiful art object. And this beautiful art object in the form of world created by God, the creator, the artist, gives us above everything else joy. Right. That is why the creator of forms commands our respect. Underline this sentence. Why does the creator of forms demand our respect? Why does the artist demand our respect? Because the artist, by creating beautiful forms, gives us the possibility of experiencing joy. Without joy, life, according to Tagore, becomes meaningless. And the creator also serves another purpose, that is, by creating beautiful forms, the artist takes us closer to reality. The artist, as if, distills certain materials from the world around us and presents those materials to us to give us a better understanding of reality. Right. When we look at a natural scene, I mean, if you look at for example, if you look at Chatintola, for example. Oh, you have not been to Shantiniketan. Forget it. So if you are looking at, suppose somebody like me who's not an artist, I'm looking at a beautiful sunset when I'm beside a sea resort. I'm in a seaside. I'm looking at the setting sun, how the sun is setting behind the ocean. So this is a beautiful scene, right? But there are so many elements in this scene, this oceanscape, this that I get overwhelmed. I don't know exactly where to look. But if an artist creates this scene in his or her artwork, he would select certain elements, certain materials from this scene and create a beautiful scenery. Those of you who study in Kala Bhavan, I would request all of you to, if possible, look up the beautiful landscapes done by the Impressionist artists, artists like Manet, Monet, and others, and Renoir and others. So there you will find that these great artists, the Impressionist painters, they have selected certain materials from the landscape that they were exposed to and recreated those materials for us, the viewers. So when we look at these paintings, it is as if that we look at the essential features of those scenes. So that way the artists, the Impressionist artists, have been able to present to us reality in a distilled form. And Tagore gives a rather funny example. He could have given another example, but unfortunately he gives us this example. He writes that when we look at a donkey, we are not very elated. But if a painter paints the donkey, we appreciate the painting, and we even would like to hang the painting um, on our walls. Why is that? Because donkey as the animal exists in real world um, does not throw up the inner qualities, the beautiful qualities of the animal's form. But the artist would distill certain beautiful features of that animal and would recreate the animal in the painting. So yes, the basic idea is art is a kind of distillation. The art is a kind of essentialization, distillation of the reality that we experience every day. Not everyone has the power to distill the inner reality from the outer reality that one sees, but the artists have the power to distill out the inner reality of things. That is why when we look at the paintings done by the Japanese artists of Mount Fujiyama, or I cannot think of any Indian landscape painter right now. I don't know why. I'm sure there are quite a few landscape painters. Oh yes, yes, closer home. If you look at, I'm sure sooner or later, sooner than later, you will come to Shantiniketan, and I would request all of you to look at the scroll paintings, tapestries done by Binod Bihari Mukherjee, tapestries of and also of frescoes by Nandalal Bose. These artists have painted what we call typical Birbhum landscape that we have here, the landscapes of Khwai. And when you look at these landscapes, you will find these undulating land formation created by erosion, soil erosion. How these land formations um, are recorded by these artists with the inner characters of the landscapes. I mean, each landscape has got its own character. It creates certain feelings in us. If you go to a place like Sandakphu, and if you look at Mount Kanchenjunga from Sandakphu, it gives you certain kind of feelings, right? So each landscape is associated with certain feelings. Now, the landscape painters quite successfully can distill the inner qualities of those qualities of the landscape in presenting to us in the form of beautiful forms. That is why Tagore writes, a work of art captures it in its concrete individuality and forces our consciousness to see its form. I think I should read the previous sentence as well. Reality is scattered over various forms. Sorry, objects. Reality is scattered over various objects. We cannot apprehend it in its immediate pristine wholeness. This is exactly what I was saying just a little while ago. Let me read this sentence once more. Reality is scattered over various objects. We cannot apprehend it in its immediate pristine wholeness. But he doesn't write the word but. I'm adding the word but here. A work of art captures it. Captures it. What is it? The work of art captures, the it pronoun stands for reality. A work of art captures reality in its concrete individuality, in its essential qualities, that is, in its concrete individuality, and forces our consciousness to see its form. And it helps us, it encourages us to see its form, it encourages our consciousness to see reality in its true forms. Right? Not everybody is an artist. Those of us who are not artists, who are not artists, are immensely helped by artists. How? By their ability to present reality with its concrete individuality to us. We through the power of our consciousness can arrive at the essential nature of reality. Right? So, and now, of course, comes Tagore's rather funny example of an actual donkey donkey, the actual animal, and its paintings. I have already mentioned this. And now we arrive at the concluding sentence of this essay. Tagore writes, art makes us conscious of reality. And by establishing a strong, intimate bond, each single word in this sentence is important. Art makes us conscious of reality. And by establishing a strong, intimate bond with our being, it gives us the sense of a profound pleasure. So this is the objective of art. Tagore seems to give us a definition of the objective of art, the purpose of art. What purpose does art serve? You know, in many periods, many thinkers have opined that art is useless. Artists, rather than creating beautiful art objects, should go in the paddy field and do cultivation. Should go to the factories and work with their hands. Artists are people who live on an ivory tower. Artists who do not have any overt social function. This charge has been made against artists on a number of occasions. But Tagore here tries to give us a completely different point of view. Artists are important. The function of an artist is essential for the human race. Why? Because the artist's ability to create forms, the artist's ability to create beautiful objects necessitates, it results in man's desire to form a bond with the world. And this bond, this kinship with the world, in turn, would give man immense pleasure. And through pleasure, man would arrive at a greater self-realization. So, if we consider that man's objectives in this world are not merely the mere needs, animal needs to survive, the desire to know the world, this desire for knowledge, but also to make the world his own, her own, to establish a bond, a relationship of kinship with the world, man has to go to the world of art. Only world of art can give man a greater realization of reality. And this realization comes through experiencing feelings, different kinds of feelings, diverse feelings, feelings which are joyful, feelings that are not so joyful. But through experiencing these feelings, man pushes back the limit of his or her experience. Man becomes attuned to the world, becomes aware of the inner being of the world. And the moment man realizes the hidden reality of the world, man also realizes the hidden self inside him or her, the man of after our heart, the soulmate that is there inside us. And this would in turn give man a greater self-realization, self-understanding. Right. Yes. So, in a nutshell, that is all that I have to say. If you have got any questions, I can try my best to answer. I'll be very happy to answer. But I think now you know why Tagore did not see any fundamental difference between his social projects and his artistic projects. And I think I have mentioned to you that in the 1930s, when he went to Russia, you know it very well that Tagore visited many continents, many countries in the world. And when he visited Russia in 1930s, if my memory serves me right, he visited Russia in 1931. Now, Russia at that point in time, of course, it was called Soviet Russia then. It was in the process of massive rebuilding after the socialist revolutions that took place in Soviet Russia, the October Revolution and others. So, and he visited an orphanage there in Moscow. He visited an orphanage, and there in that orphanage, he came across young children, and he spent some time with them. And these young children, Tagore was very fond of young children. Tagore was very fond of children, and incidentally, children also loved his company. Many adult individuals would find it a daunting task to come near to Tagore, but children did not have any inhibitions. They would come to Tagore very easily, and they would, and Tagore would engage in all kinds of playful activities with them. So these kids, these young children, also requested Tagore to sing Indian national anthem. And although India was not independent at that moment in time, but Tagore sang songs for them. Tagore recited his own poetry. And Tagore was also very happy to note that the syllabus, the curriculum that the orphanage practice, the organizational heads of the orphanage practice, they included art and music and dance as important essential elements in the curriculum. So children would be, taught not only to learn subjects like physics, like chemistry, like biology, but they would also be encouraged to draw and paint the very subjects that they would learn. By drawing and painting, they would have a better grip, a greater understanding of those subjects. So in that orphanage, no distinction was made between scientific subjects, or subjects like pure science, and subjects belonging to the realm of fine arts. Tagore was very happy to note that. And you know that in Shantiniketan, he started a similar kind of experience in his own school. In 1919, he established this School of Fine Arts called Kala Bhavan, which later on, of course, became two different bhavanas, Kala Bhavan and Sangeet Bhavan. So for Tagore, rural reconstruction is as important as learning astronomy. And learning to dance, learning to sing songs would be as important as learning astronomy. And learning to paint was also an important part of education system that Tagore introduced. Right. So the point is, in an essay like Creator of Forms, and as I mentioned earlier, that this was originally delivered as a lecture to Kala Bhavan students. So by giving this lecture, Tagore is encouraging the Kala Bhavan students to, to realize that artists are not superfluous. They are integral part of the human civilization. Without, if you leave aside beautiful forms, if you leave aside artistic achievements of the human race, the human civilization would lose all its shine, all its glory. So man's needs, man's knowledge, and man's ability to create beautiful forms, all these three qualities together make the human race. I think I should stop here for now. If you've got any questions, I can answer, or else we shall call it a day. And tomorrow, Devarati will take over. And if possible, I don't know, we might. Aditi has raised her hand. Aditi, would you like to ask something?
Sir, I have a question from the previous essay. May I ask?
Right. You're not very clearly audible. So